I'm a practical man. I go into the forest to fish and disconnect, not to look for scary stories. But what happened on Saturday made me pack up camp at 4 in the morning and drive down to town with my high beams on. I had tied a blue tarp between 2 fir trees to cover my firewood in case it rained. I'm tall, 1.88 meters, and I tied that line stretching my arms as high as I could. The rope was taut more than 2 meters off the ground, a height I can walk under without brushing my head. At 2:30, the sound woke me. It wasn't the chaotic noise of a bear tearing things apart. It was footsteps, slow, rhythmic, heavy. I stayed still in my sleeping bag. The campfire was down to red embers, but they cast a faint glow close to the ground. I looked out through the mesh of the tent. I saw 2 legs pass less than 3 meters from me. They were thick, covered in dark hair and dried mud. What froze my blood wasn't the hair, but watching how the feet sunk into the soft earth. The ground gave under its weight with a dense, wet sound that I felt in my chest. The figure walked straight toward where I had the tarp. I expected it to stop or have to duck deeply to get through. It didn't. The tarp rope struck it directly across the upper chest, near the collarbone. I heard the sound of the nylon stretching and scraping against something rough, like a wire brush. The tarp shook violently, dumping the collected water. The thing stopped dead. It didn't growl, it didn't startle. It simply raised a hand, an enormous, dark hand with long fingers, and lifted the rope with absurd delicacy to finish passing underneath without breaking it. It did it with the calm of a human opening a curtain. The smell reached my tent a few seconds later, a heavy mix of strong musk, stale sweat, and wet earth. It stood there for a moment with its back to me, facing the river. Its silhouette completely blocked the view of the trees beyond. It was a wall of muscle. Then it kept walking. Its steps faded into the darkness of the trail. No running, no looking back. When morning came, I went to check the rope. It was intact, but there was a smear of grease or oil where it had made contact. In the mud, the prints were smooth, human-like, but flat and wide, about 40 centimeters long. I won't be going back to that area. That thing is too big to be out there, and far too calm to be a wild animal. I had been tracking a black-tailed deer for 3 hours. The wind was in my favor, blowing straight into my face, which is ideal for approaching without being scented. The forest was calm, nothing out of the ordinary for an autumn afternoon. I stopped near a stand of oaks to scan the area with my binoculars, looking for movement in the undergrowth. About 100 meters out, I saw something dark crouched beside a fallen log. My first reaction was frustration. Because of the dark brown color and the size, I thought it was another hunter wearing a ghillie-style camouflage suit who had wandered into my quadrant without notifying anyone. I lowered the binoculars and prepared to signal him, but something stopped me. The figure was digging in the ground with its hands. It wasn't using tools, it was using its fingers. Through the lenses, I watched it tear a chunk of rotting bark from the log with absurd ease. A bear would use claws and snout. This thing used its fingers, gripping and pulling with a very human wrist motion. Then it stood up. It didn't rise like a bear rocking back to find balance. This thing simply straightened its legs and was upright. It was huge. I estimate its head easily cleared 2 meters, towering above the manzanita shrubs around it. I saw it in profile. It had a hunched posture with its head pitched forward. The fur wasn't uniform. On the shoulders it was dense and dark, but along the side it was thinner, revealing grayish, taut skin stretched over the ribs. It took 3 steps to the left. What turned my stomach was the way it lifted its feet. It didn't drag them or stomp heavily. It raised the knee very high and placed the foot on the ground with total control, as if it were walking on glass and didn't want to make a sound. It stopped, turned its head, and looked in my general direction. I don't think it saw me. I was well concealed and perfectly still, but it froze for about 10 seconds, scenting the air. At that moment, with the rifle in my hands, I felt an absolute certainty. I couldn't shoot. Not because it was illegal, but because my instincts were screaming that if I missed or only wounded it, that thing would cover the 100 meters between us before I could work the bolt. The animal turned away and moved uphill, slipping through the brush with an agility that doesn't match its body mass. It didn't snap a single branch. I waited a full 5 minutes without moving. Then I backed out the way I came, walking backward until I reached the forest road. I'm not going to report this as a wildlife sighting because I don't have photos and I don't want to be the county joke, but I'm putting it on record here. There is something on the north slope that walks like us, but it is not one of us. I'm not going to embellish this. What I reported over the radio at 06:45 in the morning was not a caffeine-deprived mistake. I've spent 20 years in this forest. I know how to tell a brown bear from a rotting log. I went down to the bend in the river to check whether the rains had undercut the angler's trail. The fog was low, covering the water up to waist height. Everything was unnervingly quiet. There were no herons, no usual splashing of trout. At about 80 meters on the opposite bank, I saw something emerge from the tree line and enter the water. At first, because of the dark brown color and massive shape, I thought it was a large elk drinking. Then, the silhouette straightened. Whatever it was stood up on 2 legs in the middle of the current. The water in that section runs icy cold and strong enough to knock over a grown man without safety lines. It didn't react at all. It remained motionless, with the water breaking against its thighs, staring into the current as if waiting for something. Through my rifle scope, I could make out details that make no biological sense for the local wildlife. I didn't see its face, but I saw its right arm. It was covered in wet hair, plastered to the skin, revealing musculature in the forearm and bicep that looked like tensioned rope under canvas. The hand hung near the knee. It was long, with thick, dark fingers that curled slightly. The most disturbing part came when it decided to cross. It didn't swim, it walked against the current. Each step was slow and mechanical. It lifted its leg exaggeratedly high to overcome the resistance of the water and planted it on the rocky bottom with absolute certainty. A bear walking on 2 legs wobbles, searches for balance. This thing advanced with the fluidity of heavy machinery. When it reached the middle of the river, it stopped and turned its head slightly toward my position. I don't think it saw me through the brush, but I felt like it was sampling the air. I stayed frozen, controlling my breathing so I wouldn't fog the scope. Seconds later, it quickened its pace, climbed the muddy embankment on the far side, a slope of nearly 60 degrees, using its hands only once to push itself up. It vanished into the undergrowth without snapping a single branch. I request a route reassignment for maintenance crews. We can't send anyone alone to that bank while that thing continues to claim the territory. It isn't aggressive, but it is dominant, and it's far too large to confront. I went up to assess the fir tree that fell during Monday's storm. It's an old tree with a trunk about 1.5 meters in diameter. To put the problem into perspective, the trunk reaches the middle of my chest. To cross it, I have to place both hands on it, lift my torso, and swing my legs over while sitting on the bark. It's a significant physical barrier. At 16:20, while I was measuring the cut for the chainsaw, I noticed movement coming down the eastern slope. At first, I thought it was an elk because of the dark brown color, but then I saw it was walking on 2 legs. It didn't stagger. It came down the incline with complete stability. I stayed still beside the root ball of the fallen tree. The figure was heading toward the same trunk, about 30 meters below my position. I got a clear look at it. It had a massive build, but what stood out was the neck. It was thick and powerful, visibly muscular, connecting the head to the shoulders in a smooth slope. It turned its head side to side fluidly, scanning the forest as it walked. I waited for it to reach the tree, assuming it would have to climb over it or go around, like any person or animal of that size would. It did neither. When it reached the trunk, again, an obstacle that comes up to my chest, it didn't even break its walking rhythm. It lifted its right leg. The knee rose with an impressive mechanical ease, clearing the height of the bark without touching it. It planted the foot on the other side and simply brought the rest of its body through. The movement was fluid, silent. It crossed a barrier of 1.5 meters as if it were a 20-centimeter step. It stopped briefly after crossing. It turned that wide neck in my direction. The distance was safe, but I felt like it was evaluating me. There was no aggression, just absolute confidence in its physical capability. It made a dry sound in its throat and continued walking toward the river. I'm not going to speculate about what species it is. I'm only reporting what I saw. Something that weighs twice as much as I do and has hip mobility that is not human. I recommend sending the cleanup crew in groups, never alone.